China's Loyal Wingman drone development is not merely a standalone project, but part of a broader reorganization of its approach to military power projection and control in future conflict environments. The concept is rooted in strategic necessity, technological ambition, and an effort to leapfrog some of the inherent structural disadvantages in its current Air Force composition. By emphasizing the integration of semi-autonomous drones with manned fighter jets, China aims to field an air combat system that is more flexible, survivable, and capable of sustained high-intensity operations without placing excessive strain on human pilots or stretching its fleet of advanced manned aircraft too thin. One of the foundational motivations behind China's investment in these systems is the recognition of a capability gap in high-end air combat experience. Unlike countries that have had decades of exposure to real-time combat environments, China's forces have largely operated under controlled training scenarios. As such, a significant portion of its modernization drive is focused on compressing decades of tactical and operational development into a few accelerated phases. Loyal Wingman drones allow China to experiment with new types of warfare, where manned jets serve more as command and control hubs, while robotic systems act as extensions of the pilot's will, executing tasks that would otherwise be too dangerous, too repetitive, or too data-intensive for humans to handle effectively under combat pressure. In practical terms, Loyal Wingman drones are expected to carry out a variety of roles: electronic warfare support, long-range surveillance, forward targeting, and even offensive strike operations. These drones are likely to carry weapons, sensors, and electronic payloads configured for specific mission types. They are designed to operate in coordination with 4th and 5th generation fighters, augmenting their capabilities and creating a force multiplier effect. Instead of requiring full autonomy, the drones are generally expected to execute preset commands or respond to pilot inputs, while retaining enough adaptive logic to make limited decisions during rapidly changing combat conditions. The structural and design features of China's prototypes suggest a focus on low observability, modular payload systems, and internal weapon carriage. This hints at an intent to deploy them in contested or semi-contested airspace, where survivability is essential. Designs tend to feature blended wing bodies, smooth surfaces, and concealed intakes, all traits associated with minimizing radar signatures. Their likely cruising profiles suggest that China is preparing to use these drones in both high-speed and high-altitude operations, where the ability to penetrate defenses without detection could significantly shift the dynamics of early engagement in a conflict scenario. A key strategic benefit of Loyal Wingman drones is the expansion of coverage and reach. For countries with limited long-range strike assets, the ability to distribute combat power across multiple drones, each one potentially equipped with its own sensors, jammers, or munitions, extends situational awareness and combat influence over a much wider geographic area. This becomes particularly relevant in vast regions where China has growing interests in contested zones. These drones allow Chinese planners to saturate these spaces with persistent surveillance and response capabilities, all while limiting the exposure of human pilots in high-cost aircraft. Moreover, the use of such drones supports redundancy and resilience in operations. Manned aircraft are expensive, take years to train crews for, and are difficult to replace in the middle of a conflict. Drones, especially those designed to be attritable, expendable in a tactical sense, offer a buffer. In a swarm scenario, adversaries are forced to expend disproportionate resources, missiles, attention, and time, to counter threats that are relatively cheap to replace. This shifts the cost equation of war. It pressures opponents to either ignore the drones and risk surprise attacks or waste limited air defense capacity on targets that are not individually critical. But deploying this type of capability presents immense technological and operational challenges. For Loyal Wingman drones to function effectively in combat, they must be integrated into the broader data architecture of Air Force operations. That means linking them securely to satellites, ground stations, and airborne command assets, all while preserving the ability to operate independently if communications are jammed or cut. The artificial intelligence and machine learning systems that guide the drones must be able to distinguish friend from foe, recognize threats, navigate dynamic environments, and prioritize among multiple mission tasks with limited bandwidth and processing power. The decision-making logic embedded in these drones cannot be simplistic. In modern air combat, the timing of a maneuver or a weapon release may be a matter of milliseconds. A human pilot may not have the time to micromanage multiple drones while defending against incoming threats, navigating terrain, and managing sensor inputs. Therefore, autonomy must be both reliable and limited, intelligent enough to execute pre-approved missions and adapt to unforeseen circumstances, but not so autonomous that it behaves unpredictably or makes errors in high-stakes scenarios. China's approach to developing this kind of autonomy has likely been accelerated by its broader national focus on AI and machine reasoning. The country's civilian tech sector has seen huge investment in image recognition, language models, autonomous vehicle algorithms, and distributed computing, skills and technologies that directly translate into the military UAV domain. However, converting those advances into battle-ready systems is a complex, high-risk process. Software bugs, unforeseen interactions between systems, and limitations in real-world testing all pose obstacles to field deployment. Furthermore, trust in autonomy during lethal missions is not just a technical problem, it's an institutional one. It requires doctrinal clarity, robust oversight, and a willingness to accept a degree of machine error in environments where mistakes can carry strategic consequences. Another factor shaping the evolution of China's Loyal Wingman drones is industrial scalability. Unlike manned fighter aircraft, which require long assembly timelines, rigorous pilot training, and expensive logistical support, drones, especially those designed with mass production in mind, can be produced in much greater quantities. China's state-controlled aerospace sector is well positioned to scale production quickly once a design is finalized. This gives Chinese planners the flexibility to deploy these drones in numbers sufficient to create operational saturation, flooding regions of interest with air assets that complicate enemy targeting and defense strategies. However, the strategic clarity of this effort is not without internal contradictions. On one hand, China is pushing to field modernized, interconnected, high-tech systems. On the other, it often falls back on traditional centralized command structures, rigid decision-making hierarchies, and legacy thinking in operational doctrine. Merging high-autonomy systems into an organization that is still adapting to decentralized decision-making will not be seamless. There will be friction, between new tools and old mindsets, between innovation and risk aversion, between speed of technology and the caution of military bureaucracy. Further, while China's ambition is evident, it continues to operate with a degree of technological dependence and imitation. Several of its UAV designs bear close resemblance to foreign origin models, and while the functionality may be original or domestically developed, this imitation suggests that much of its work is still driven by a desire to catch up, not necessarily to lead in conceptual innovation. This reactionary posture leaves gaps in doctrinal independence and reduces the opportunity to define the future shape of aerial warfare on its own terms. Yet, the longer-term vision is clear, a future where Loyal Wingman drones are not auxiliary systems, but central nodes in a larger network of autonomous, manned-unmanned coordinated warfare. These drones will not just fly beside manned aircraft, they will be integral to the detection, decision, and destruction chains. They will carry not just weapons, but the burden of combat risk. They will form the outer layers of defense, the front edge of attack, and the eyes and ears of high-value aircraft operating from safer distances. Ultimately, China's Loyal Wingman drone development signals its understanding of where air warfare is heading, and its intent to be a major actor in shaping that future. The pace of progress, the depth of operational testing, and the eventual quality of integration into live air combat forces will determine whether this ambition translates into genuine battlefield advantage or remains aspirational. But there is little doubt that these systems are no longer theoretical. They represent a shift in the structure and strategy of modern air power, and they are evolving fast.